How's everybody doing? Amazing. I see a lot of familiar faces, some new faces. It's so great to be here. I am so pumped and so excited. And we have an amazing day set for you guys with so many great leaders in the Canadian space. But before we jumped in to all of this great content, I want to make sure, of course, introduce myself. So for those that are hearing my voice for the very first time, my name is Ashley Wright. I am the founder of Femtech, a really great community helping more women get into blockchain, crypto, and more. And then also working alongside with CoinDesk as our community partnerships lead as well. So I'm excited. We have a lot of great content. I love high energy, guys. So as you guys are here, take pictures, make sure to use hashtag consensus 2025 and make sure to just have fun and keep an open mind. So we're gonna jump right into our first panel session. And we have a great conversation kicking things off, talking about regulation and adoption specifically in Canada. So please help me welcome to the stage, Kunal, Shireen, and Adam.
Do I get to split up the...
Amazing. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Excited. And Shireen, how are you?
I'm good. I'm getting used to the lights. I feel like I just came out of the spa from being in the back.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm so pumped. And more specifically because obviously this is the first time consensus is in Canada, or in Canada specifically. And so there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of great innovation here in the city. And I'm excited because today's conversation over the next several panels is really highlighting leaders in blockchain specifically across Canada. And you guys are here to kick it off. And I'm so excited. So before we jump into the questions, I'd love for you guys to introduce yourself, maybe starting off with Kunal.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Kunal Bhasin. I'm a partner with KPMG. I head up the digital asset practice for KPMG in Canada. Been with the firm for 7 years, built the crypto practice from ground up, and personally been in crypto for over a decade at this point. Happy to be here and talking to you, every one of you.
Amazing.
Thank you. Shireen Khan, I'm a regulatory expert. I've been in the field for about 3 decades. I joined the digital asset space in 2015, coming in as an expert to help grow and to advocate for the sector coming from traditional finance. I run kind of 2 streams of work. One is policy and advocacy, and I play a role on behalf of the ecosystem where we advocate for innovative law, and I also do a bit of strategic advisory on the regulatory side for firms looking to grow in the digital asset space. And the complement to that is that we also provide them with a technology solution.
Hey everyone, my name is Adam Kai, the CEO and founder of Rogo.co. We started a Canadian trading platform since 2019. And now we have operations in Australia, United States, having service around trading platform, OTC, asset management, crypto wallet, Virgo Pay, quite a bit of business lines. Actually, 2 of them launched during the Consensus Week. Nice to talk with all of you.
Awesome. So as you guys can see, we have some amazing people on the panel. By the way, I have to plug you guys, because if you guys are not following them, make sure that you do. But I want to dive right in, because of course we're here to talk about adoption in Canada, the developments, and a little bit of regulation, just to give people some insight into what Canada is really like when it comes to blockchain and some of the innovations. So I guess the first question I have is, what would you say are some of the biggest barriers as well as challenges that are currently holding Web3 innovation back in Canada specifically? And maybe I'll throw this to you, Adam.
Wow, good question for me for the first one.
Dive right in.
Well, okay. I think, first of all, I think Canada is taking quite a bit of steps in terms of defining what regulation framework should be for multiple business lines. Trading platforms, stablecoin, asset management, and recently they have approved a Solana ETF, which is a big thing. So I think in general speaking, certainly it's on the right direction to provide certain guidance toward industry. And I think if you kind of compare Canada to globally, I would say there are certain things the global regulator may have different opinions on different things. I think, in general speaking, we are obviously navigating through the Canadian regulatory landscape, trying to figure out the best path for being a kind of a proud Canadian entrepreneur from day one, and also being able to have that ability to compete on the global stage. So I think that is actually quite important to keep in mind as well. But I think, we're in Canada, good environment,
Yes.
but everybody have to be obviously keep in mind of what's happening in the world, and taking that global perspective. I think that's what's very important.
Maybe Shireen, do you want to add to that?
Sure. I mean, I probably am not as conservative as Adam because I'm not a registrant in the space, and so I think we're dealing with a bit of ambiguity in this space. In some instances, Canada has I would say, a contrarian view to what we've seen in other jurisdictions that have matured and developed regulatory frameworks that are driving them forward and giving that competitive advantage as to, and Bermuda is a good case. We've seen traction in El Salvador with Bitcoin being a legal tender. And I also believe that here, we're lacking that institutional adoption piece. And it's almost like TradFi and the new digital asset space isn't really talking together to figure out how we leap Canada forward. And so I think that is a huge barrier for us, not working together to sort of drive this sector forward, because there's a lot of potential if we can bridge those two worlds.
Yeah, I'd say, the way, when I talk about regulatory environment and the challenges there, I like to split it like, okay, which regulations are we talking about? So when we talk about the funds, yes, Canada is quite ahead in terms of its competitors and peers as well. Exchange, custody, the rules are pretty clear, a little bit more stringent than some of the other regulations, but it's done well for Canada so far. When we talk about stablecoin adoption and the stablecoin use cases, I'm sure if you've heard other panels from Canadians, that is a sore point right now for us. And I think the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is digital assets has not been a priority for the federal government. By the way, all views are my own, not my firm's. It's not been a priority from the Fed at this point, and I think that needs to change. If you see what's happening in the US, especially when we talk about stablecoins, like the US Treasury has come out and said that stablecoin is going to be potentially a $2 trillion market cap asset by 2028. And in Canada, we're still talking about how sore our regulations are when it comes to stablecoins. And you see what's happening with companies like Stripe, how they're entering 100 countries, and B2B are operating on stablecoins and paying each other in stablecoins. It's not, the level of adoption is not there at the institutional level in Canada. And I think the tone needs to be set from the top, from the Fed. I think, provinces have been trying to do their best, but I think the tone needs to come from the federal government to say digital assets is a priority for Canada, and this is an area that we're going to put our focus in. If you don't have people that are able to focus in all the different areas that they have to look into,
And where does it truly fit? I think,
exactly.
where does it truly fit?
Exactly. So I think that's been a challenge. And also on the institutional side, you see what banks are doing globally in the US, Singapore, Hong Kong, all these global hubs, financial hubs, what they have been doing. Like Canadian institutions need to move beyond proof of concept and do actual products and actually adopt crypto assets and digital assets.
I love that. And it's like you said, it's unfortunate because there is so much innovation here. We think about Ethereum as an example from here in Toronto.
I found BitTensor founders are also
Yes.
Canadians.
Yes, that's right. There's a lot. There's actually quite a few. There is a lot of innovation, and it is unfortunate. But I guess going off of your last point, you mentioned that it's maybe not on the agenda for a lot of them. But do you think there is actual interest when it comes to, on a fundamental level, I should say?
I think interest might be there, but there's reluctance to be more public about it. Like if you look at the elections in the US, crypto was a big point in those elections, like, and it actually, some would call it like it turned some of the election in some favor. But in Canada, like, we had, one of the biggest elections, and there was hardly any mention of crypto, digital assets. No one even brought that to the agenda because there is reluctance. And I think that's also coming in from TradFi, where they consider digital assets to be a career risk. But I've been saying for a long time, like, not being in crypto, not being in digital assets is going to be a career risk for them in months, not even years.
And so now I'm curious, we talked about the challenges. We know that there's obviously a lot of innovation here. So when it comes to people that are building and a lot of startups, what does that look like, and how are they, I guess, adopting or shifting because of that kind of framework now?
That's a tough one.
You run a startup, Shireen.
Get the tough ones, Dad.
So maybe I can speak a bit from an entrepreneur perspective. I think Canada, is a great country, have a lot of talents. And these people are super smart. And if you compare, obviously the cost of hiring in Canada to United States or around the globe, it's actually very affordable. So these people are very, talented, working very hard. So I think, the environment of getting the people is pretty right. And I think Canada is also good to incubating ideas, right? So you kind of understanding, okay, what do you want to do? You can build a prototype, and you can see where kind of, your road can hit. But I think Canada, the problem with Canada now is never going to be the ending point, right? We are proud Canadian companies, but whenever I go to global conferences, where I say I'm a Canadian company, people say, oh, good for you, but I'm kidding. So I want to be able to have the global presence and also the global impact. You literally need to build a product that can be adopted by the Asian users, by the United States users. You have to really kind of bring that innovation outside of Canada. So I think that's, the approach for the Canadian entrepreneurs is you can really build everything from scratch, relatively cost, effectively and find the right people. But then you have to figure out a really fast way to, take the evolution outside of Canada, unfortunately. And I think that's what we'll be doing is starting from today, Virgo is going to be a global brand. So Canada is our home base. I will be here for most of the times. We have to global.
I mean, if I look at it from a challenge perspective, and I use Atom as a use case, I think there isn't clarity around the natural path of what I'm supposed to do. If I'm a startup in certain jurisdictions and neighboring jurisdictions, there's that path. Either I go through the incubation or I go through the regulatory. Firms are spending a lot of money behind law firms and other advisors to just simply figure out what is the path that I should take. And the sad reality is we've seen firms kind of go through that model and now then decide to leave Canada after spending a lot of money in figuring out that process. And I think what truly needs to happen is clarity around that model, right? If I'm entering Canada and I want to do certain product offering, what's the path for me? And what defines, or what's that discovery process that tells me there's a regulatory regime associated with what I'm going to do? And we have lost a lot of talent already in Canada, and we've lost a lot of big logos. And I think that's, in my perspective, one of the main contributors associated with that. There isn't clarity around it, and firms don't know how to get that clarity. Don't get me wrong, we've got a sandbox model under the Securities Administration, and it's funny, somebody asked me earlier today, like, what are the stats around that? Like, can we prove how many people that have gone through the actual innovation center that have seen progress versus not? And I didn't have an answer because it's the stories that I know of are not, and by no means am I saying don't go through the process and don't get a business in Canada. I'm saying we have some maturity work to do in terms of if we want to retain talent and we want companies to build and stay here and we want to have that competitive advantage. Right now, that clarity doesn't exist.
I think the small point that I'd add is, with the new capital gains tax rules, I think a lot of funding is also leaving Canada. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at, and that's not good for builders and innovators that are looking for funding from Canadian VCs or Canadian funds to build their businesses here.
Amazing. You guys touched on some really key points, and yeah, oops, perfect. Yeah, you guys touched on some really great points there, and I think once again, it's unfortunate, but once you're highlighting the innovative people that are here, right? And of course, funding I think is big, not even just for us in Canada, but across the board. It is very important because there is a lot of innovation, a lot of great startups that are building. So being able to have those resources, I think is really going to help Canadians that are building want to stay, because we need that support, and obviously we need that regulation and those guidelines to be successful in this space. So, and so kind of shifting gears, going towards our last question, and just changing up a little bit. So let's say we fast forward 5 years from now, what headline would you hope to see that you can read about when it comes to Canada in the blockchain space?
Hey, banks adopting stablecoins and people leveraging, no CBDC. But banks actually adopting stablecoins for B2B, making Toronto and Canada an actual international financial hub, and Canadians having a lot more options in terms of how they want to manage and move their money.
For me, it'll be some headline that says Canada is emerging as a global leader in innovative regulation in some shape or form.
Okay, love it.
Virgo CX tops the world.
I was just about to say that. Virgo, starting from Canada, taking over the world. I'm kidding. Yeah, I think, probably too much to say, okay, Canada want to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Like I think US has done it. So it's really kind of, we want to see a national priority on the blockchain, right? On the digital assets. Like, I met with, obviously, the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, last time. I told him, listen, we are good people in the crypto industry. Like, we create utilities around payments, remittance, and we're not just about speculation. And he said, yeah, I think I like that, right? So I think our government politics have to know crypto is not there to wash your money or like to have some kind of speculations. There are many, many good usage, stablecoin, real world assets, name it. They can actually change your economic activities by large margin. And if you do that in Canada first, then you attract people over to use you as a sample to copy globally. That's how Canada can make impacts. So I'm hoping that through this conference, some governments, officials, or regulators will hear us. And I think the industry have a very unified voice, as we want to be more innovative, and we want to be leading the world if we're given opportunities.
I love that. I love that. So to end things off, maybe just let everyone know where we can find you. Starting off with Kunal.
LinkedIn or Telegram, feel free to say hi to me. I'm around at the conference later as well. So Kunal Bhasin, KPMG. You can find me on LinkedIn and we can connect there.
LinkedIn, I'm also part of the Canadian Blockchain Association. I chair the regulatory committee, and
the CBC.
Yeah, their mandate is really to help the ecosystem. So if you're facing challenges in the space and have a voice that you need raised with regulators here locally or internationally, I think that's also a channel that you can find me, because I'm also always looking to collect data on how we can do better to help the overall ecosystem.
So I guess I will be the most easy one to find, because we actually have a huge booth right there. So Virgo booth actually to the top of the lane. So we actually paid quite a bit to become a sponsorship. So feel free to come to find me over there. We will still stay here for a few hours. So we'll be looking to strike any partnership deals together with you guys.
Awesome. Well, give it up for our panel.
Thank you.